The chandeliers of the grand ballroom shimmered like captured stars, casting golden light over silk gowns and tailored tuxedos. Isabella Moretti stood beside Alessandro De Luca, her hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. The city's most powerful figures filled the room, raising glasses to charity while quietly measuring influence and loyalty. At 9 months pregnant, Isabella felt the weight of more than just the child she carried. Tonight was about appearances. About proving the De Luca empire was untouchable. A sharp pain tightened across her abdomen. She inhaled slowly, forcing a smile as another contraction rippled through her body. Leaning toward Alessandro, she whispered that it was time. For a split second, concern flickered in his dark eyes. Then the doors burst open. Sofia Romano, his former fiancée, stumbled inside, pale and shaken, claiming men were following her. The music faltered. Whispers spread like wildfire. Alessandro's expression hardened as she clutched his arm, insisting she had information about a planned attack from a rival family. Isabella felt another contraction, stronger this time, stealing her breath. She expected Alessandro to lift her, to carry her out, to choose her. Instead, he barked orders to his guards to escort his wife to the hospital. He would drive Sofia himself. Shock numbed Isabella more than the pain. As she was guided through flashing cameras and murmuring guests, tears blurred the glittering lights. The car door shut, sealing her fate. Hours later, in a sterile hospital room, Isabella gave birth to a son, without her husband by her side. And something inside her quietly broke. The estate felt colder after that night. Though spring sunlight poured through the tall windows, Isabella sensed only distance in the marble halls. Baby Luca slept peacefully in a cradle beside her, unaware of the fracture that had split his parents apart. Alessandro tried to resume life as though nothing had changed, issuing orders, hosting meetings, maintaining control of his empire, but the silence between them was louder than any argument. He claimed his decision at the gala had been strategic. Sofia had information about a rival family's planned strike, he insisted. Driving her personally ensured loyalty, ensured safety. Isabella listened without expression, her face calm, her eyes unreadable. She no longer asked for explanations, she no longer sought reassurance. Instead, she shifted her focus entirely to her son. Moving into the east wing of the mansion, she created a world centered around Luca. Soft lullabies, late-night feedings, quiet determination. The staff noticed the change. So did the Capos' wives, who began visiting more often. Over tea and polite conversation, Isabella listened carefully, learning about accounts, investments, hidden assets. If she was to remain in this world, she would understand every piece of it. Rumors swirled that Sofia still lingered near Alessandro's operations. Isabella said nothing. She watched. Then one evening, gunshots shattered the estate gates. An attempted attack, meant as a warning. Acting on instinct, Isabella secured Luca in a hidden safe room before guards even reacted. When Alessandro found them safe, fear in his eyes, he realized something had changed. His wife was no longer simply protected. She was preparing to protect herself. Sofia did not disappear after the gala. She settled in like a shadow that refused to fade. Though she claimed she was only cooperating with Alessandro for protection, her presence grew more frequent. Private meetings behind closed doors, hushed conversations that stopped when Isabella entered a room. The staff noticed. The Capos noticed. Isabella noticed most of all. But she did not confront her husband in anger. She observed. Through quiet inquiries and subtle requests, Isabella began reviewing financial ledgers tied to emergency security funds, the same funds Alessandro claimed were necessary because of the threats Sofia had warned about. Numbers did not lie, even when people did. Payments had been rerouted through shell accounts. Large withdrawals aligned perfectly with Sofia's reappearance. One afternoon, Isabella requested tea with Sofia in the garden. The air was warm, the roses in bloom, the setting deceptively peaceful. Sofia wore confidence like perfume, speaking as though she still belonged in the De Luca world. She underestimated the calm woman across from her. Isabella asked careful questions, letting silence do the work. Sophia slipped, small inconsistencies, rehearsed stories cracking at the edges. It was enough. Days later, Isabella placed a folder on Alessandro's desk. Bank transfers, falsified reports, proof that Sophia had manipulated the narrative of danger to secure her position again. Worse, some funds traced dangerously close to rival territory. Betrayal flickered across Alessandro's face, not toward his wife, but toward the woman he had trusted. For the first time since the gala, Isabella saw regret in her husband's eyes. But clarity did not erase the damage already done. War did not announce itself with ceremony. It arrived in smoke and shattered glass. After Sophia's exposure, the rival family stopped hiding behind whispers and struck openly. The Lucca warehouses burned at the docks. Shipments vanished. Trusted men were ambushed in alleyways before dawn. The empire Alessandro had built through fear and precision was suddenly under siege. This time, Isabella did not retreat to the East Wing. She stood in the main office beside her husband as reports poured in. While Alessandro coordinated retaliation through loyal captains, Isabella examined the financial arteries of the organization. She froze vulnerable accounts, rerouted funds through cleaner channels, and secured overseas assets before authorities could sniff weakness. Her calm efficiency surprised even the oldest advisors. Nights blurred into mornings filled with strategy sessions and coded phone calls. The distance between husband and wife slowly shifted into partnership. Arguments were replaced with sharp, focused discussions. Decisions were shared. Then came the ambush. A convoy meant to negotiate safe passage was intercepted on a deserted highway. Bullets tore through metal. In the chaos, Alessandro pulled Isabella behind an armored vehicle, shielding her with his body as gunfire rained down. He was grazed along his shoulder, blood staining his white shirt, but he refused to release her hand. When reinforcements arrived and the attackers fled, silence fell heavy around them. In the aftermath, beneath flashing lights and distant sirens, Alessandro admitted the truth. Driving Sophia that night had been fueled by unresolved guilt, not love. Isabella met his eyes steadily. Respect had been rebuilt in battle. Trust, however, would take longer. Years passed, and the empire stabilized under a quieter, sharper rule. Lucca grew from a fragile infant into a perceptive boy who listened more than he spoke. He noticed the way men straightened when his mother entered a room, how decisions often paused until she gave the slightest nod. Isabella no longer operated from the shadows. She worked openly beside Alessandro, reviewing contracts, overseeing investments, and quietly influencing which alliances survived. Yet peace in their world was never permanent. Subtle leaks began to surface, shipment routes exposed, private meetings anticipated by rivals, confidential negotiations collapsing before they were finalized. Someone within their trusted circle was feeding information outward. Suspicion traveled like poison, infecting even long-standing loyalties. Alessandro's instinct leaned toward swift punishment, but Isabella urged patience. She traced patterns instead of tempers, following financial breadcrumbs and communication gaps. The inconsistencies formed a familiar signature, careful, manipulative, always 2 steps removed from the source. Sophia had resurfaced again, this time not as a desperate woman seeking protection, but as a silent broker working between enemies. She had learned from her previous mistakes. She kept her hands clean. But Isabella had learned too. Rather than bloodshed, Isabella orchestrated something colder. Through legal channels and strategic exposure of financial crimes, she dismantled Sophia's support system piece by piece. Accounts were frozen. Allies abandoned her. Protection vanished. When Sophia fled the country, stripped of influence and resources, there were no dramatic confrontations, only quiet exile. Alessandro understood then. Power was not always loud. Sometimes it wore elegance and patience, and answered to his wife. A decade after the night that nearly broke them, the De Lucca estate glowed once again beneath crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Another grand gala filled the ballroom, but this time the atmosphere felt different, steadier, earned rather than displayed. Isabella descended the staircase in a deep emerald gown, her posture regal, her expression composed. Conversation softened as she entered. Respect followed her like a shadow. She was no longer remembered as the woman abandoned during labor. Within the underworld, she was known as La Regina, the queen who rebuilt stability from betrayal. Business leaders sought her approval before sealing deals. Even seasoned capos measured their words carefully in her presence. Alessandro stood waiting near the center of the room, older now, the sharp edges of arrogance replaced with hard-won wisdom. When Isabella joined him, he did not simply offer his arm. He took her hand openly, intertwining their fingers as equals. The gesture did not go unnoticed. Luca, now a tall, observant teenager, watched from nearby. He had inherited his father's commanding presence and his mother's quiet calculation. He understood the legacy he would one day carry, but he also understood something more important: power without loyalty was fragile. Midway through the evening, Alessandro raised a glass. In front of allies and rivals alike, he acknowledged the truth that his greatest mistake had forged his strongest partnership. The night Isabella went into labor had reshaped not only their marriage, but the empire itself. As applause echoed through the ballroom, Isabella met his gaze calmly. She had risen the moment she was left alone. And she had never looked back.